Marilee, thank you. Oh, busy morning. So thank you, Marilee. And look at my new chair. You like my new chair? I hope I don't fall off. Are you a little nervous? Don't worry, I'll be fine. So I got a new chair. We got our new set today. We got new vibes here. We're getting into a new season. So welcome to church, and welcome as we continue to study 1 Kings. So sometimes you think, oh, the Old Testament, oh, it's so not related to our lives, and it's so violent and terrible and yada, yada, yada. Well, as Presbyterians, we're with Jesus, that was the only testament Jesus knew. So it's important for us to study the Old Testament and to be, wise. There's lots of things to be found there. So today is our second week, and don't worry if you missed week 1. Today we are with King, did you catch that? King Solomon. So there's been a handoff. King David has passed the baton, and there was no fumble or anything like that. It was a very smooth Olympic passing of the baton to the next person in the relay from King David to King Solomon. So that went nice and smooth. And then today, King Solomon is a little nervous about his new job. So it's a marvelous scene in 1 Kings chapter 3 where King Solomon, what does he do? He prays. So it's this beautiful jewel of a text where there's King Solomon and he's praying. It's kind of put as a dream sequence. So it's is this a dream? Is it a prayer? And there's some overlap there. And then lo and behold, God speaks. So it's a rare thing when God speaks in the Bible. So this is one of those rare texts where God appears. And God appears and says, what do you want? I mean, my gosh, God seems like somebody at a drive-through. What do you want? You want fries with that? It's rare that that's what God shows up. And I've always been a little bit cautious about God is not a genie who's looking to fulfill our wishes. But in this case, wow, does God have that vibe or what? And then Solomon responds. Man, if God said to you, what do you want? What would you say? And interestingly, Solomon says, kind of shows he's a little nervous. He says, I have to lead all these people, and I don't know what I am doing. So could you give me a discerning mind? Would you give me understanding so that I can tell the difference between what is good and what is bad? That's what he asks for. And God, like an Olympic judge, gives him a 10. Do they still award 10s these days? It's so mysterious, all the scoring. God gives them a 15, I don't know, in gymnastics, didn't it seem like 14 was doing pretty good? God's like, oh my gosh, score in that prayer. God's like, maybe God's kind of relieved. I thought you were going to ask me for a long life and health. I thought you were going to ask me for riches. I thought you were going to ask me to smite your enemies. And you didn't. You asked me for wisdom. How refreshing is that? And you know what, Solomon? I will for sure give you wisdom. And I'm going to give you such wisdom like there hasn't been seen in the whole wide world. And thus, King Solomon became famous for being wise. So this is kind of an origin story for how did King Solomon get associated with wisdom. So we can follow that along in our next thread of study, Wise King Solomon. So this is the part where I ask you guys, and I'm very sincere about this, what is wisdom to you? What is wisdom? What is the meaning of wisdom? Wherever you are today, what comes to mind? And maybe we'd say there's wisdom versus knowledge, or wisdom versus being smart. What is wisdom to you? What is captured in that word more than some other words? Anything come to mind? Yeah? To see the truth in something. So it might be presenting as something else, but wisdom helps you see the truth. Okay, other things about wisdom. Let's keep going. Oh, wisdom isn't about yourself. It's seeing the situation and the context and other people. Wisdom. Oh, wow. Keep going.
I was going to say the ability to do or say the right thing in given situation.
The ability to do or say the right thing in a variety of situations. So there's maybe an ethical vibe of where it goes. The right thing, doing the right thing, saying the right thing. Other thoughts about wisdom?
Judgmental experience, or being able to judge and from experience, based on experience.
Okay, that's what I wondered about too, to be able to judge based on experience. Experience. Great. Other thoughts, anything at all about wisdom? Discernment. Yeah, that's what the title for today was, discernment. And I was like, should today's title be discernment or wisdom? So what's discernment to you? Yeah, so discernment. I love that word. And it's a spiritual word, and I hope it's a word that we use regularly here and practice here. Discernment, just being able to weigh true and false. And it has a sense of winnowing. For an agrarian community, if you're winnowing, like the wheat, separating the wheat from the chaff, and the wind helps the heavy things stick, and the chaff blows off. So that's a wonderful way of viewing wisdom. So take that in. What does wisdom look like in a situation? So you don't have to say what the situation was, but in a situation where wisdom was a part of that situation, can you describe how wisdom looked versus something that wasn't quite wisdom? What does wisdom look like in a situation? It's not emotional. Not a fit, not having your own way. You're calm, you're listening. That's what wisdom looks like in a situation. Other thoughts, what does wisdom look like or feel like in a situation? Intuition goes with wisdom. And say more about that. Where does intuition come from? Life experiences. Listening. Visualizing. Okay, being able to read situations and people. Like, what's really going on here? What's really going on here? So, do you all like wisdom? Looking for more of it in your life? Would you like more of it in your leaders, in our leaders? Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. I think that makes a great prayer. In these times, we can get very overwhelmed, or in any situation. I'm reminded sometimes people will say to me, "What should I do?" And I just think, "Oh gosh, I would never interfere. You are you, and you see, 360, or Lord help you see 360 in a situation." And I think a good prayer is for wisdom. May God give you wisdom. May God give me wisdom. I was reminded that our church has a special prayer. What's the discovery prayer? Lord, let your vision be our vision. I think that's a prayer for wisdom. And it's not a bad prayer for any of us. Lord, let your vision be my vision. So wisdom is a really big deal. And I encourage you to value it, to pray for it, and even apply it in your life as a person of faith. So what does a person of faith applying wisdom look like? Well, one thing it looks like is, I'll give you many different examples, but one thing it looks like was Bible study this week. Bible study this week, as usual, and anyone's welcome to join. If we need to start a new group, let me know. It cracks me up, it opens my mind, and wisdom gets formed. And, a couple comments. One, and I hope it's okay if I share this. Brad, are you a fan of King David?
I'm still learning to appreciate.
Oh, that's such a wise response. So I love Brad's take on King David. Brad says, I'm still learning to appreciate King David. I think that's a wise take on David. And this week, when we read chapter 2, which precedes chapter 3, Kay said, King Solomon did what? I think that was a wise reaction. So as people of faith, part of practicing wisdom, I'd say, is healthy skepticism in how we read the Bible, in biblical interpretation itself. The Bible passed through human hands. It did not drop from plates in the sky. And when we read certain passages or see certain things, it's okay for us to say, what's going on here? And, for 1st and 2nd Samuel, which is King David's story, a lot of King David's story, 1st and 2nd Kings, a lot of Solomon's story, it passed through human hands who wanted these kings to look perfect and polished and all that. But in doing that, there was reality in those stories too. So sometimes there's this thing of whitewashing, and we do it too with history. We want everything to be perfect and simple. And when it's stories about holy people, there's a fancy word called hagiography. Like, oh, they were saints almost. And we clean up the story and lose sight. These were humans. They had foibles. And so it's okay as people of faith to use wisdom, healthy skepticism when we read the Bible. Not to be total skeptics and say we have to throw the Bible out, but no, to use our God-given wisdom, our analytical skills, or as educators talk about, critical thinking. And critical thinking doesn't mean we criticize. Critical thinking just means exercising wisdom, not being so darn naive. Actually, this came up in Bible study a week or so ago about social media. Do we accept everything as truth in social media? Oh my gosh, I hope not. As people of faith, and as anybody, hopefully we use wisdom. We don't accept things at face value. That's part of our biblical tradition. Even King Solomon, before this prayer today, I would say he was exercising some wisdom back in chapter 2. There's kind of a ugly, dramatic story there. Last week, we met Solomon's older brother. Remember Adonijah? Adonijah was the one who was trying to, I think Bruce grabbed the crown. Anyway, Adonijah last week tried to grab the crown of power, and he got tamped down by the prophet Nathan and Bathsheba and King David. Well, Adonijah appears again in chapter 2, right before our story today. And Adonijah makes a request, and he acts like, oh, I'm not asking anything much at all. And Bathsheba takes the request to King Solomon, and King Solomon's like, you've got to be kidding me. My older brother asked for what? And King Solomon saw straight through his elder brother, that his elder brother still thought he was the king, he deserved the crown, and he was acting like he could make another power grab. Solomon saw straight through it. He was exercising wisdom, healthy skepticism. He read through Adonijah's request and said, this is part of a coup. You're trying to undermine me. Now, he could have been being paranoid, but, if you look at the details of the story, it was another power grab. So Solomon, he didn't accept the face of the request. He saw beneath it to an ego move, a power move, something harmful. He was exercising wisdom. And so it's okay for us to use our spidey senses, or as Charlene said, our intuition. Time and trial and life experiences, also shaped by standards of goodness and righteousness and care for our neighbor and love, love, love. Those things come together and help us form wisdom. When something is offered to us, we can think, is there something else going on there? And we're not being mean, we're being authentic, and we're called to do that in lots of circumstances, and we're not being mean. Of course, there's a way to do it without being critical or harmful. There's a way to exercise it in a way that seeks light and healing and truth and the common good. There's a way to exercise wisdom. I was so surprised this week when I was mulling over this topic, and lo and behold, there was a story from someone covering the Olympics, a sports writer, who said he was very surprised by all the athletes' comments on their sport and how much wisdom, he used the word wisdom, that the athletes shared. Wow, top-level, world-class athletes are sharing wisdom. He said, and he had so many different examples, when he listened to the top class, or any of the athletes really, he said that it wasn't so much about winning, it was about improving. One athlete shared that, wow, she had so many different areas that she could look at in her sport that there was always something she could improve on. It was always about process and progress. Like, she could improve being a better team member one day or some other part of her sport. Someone else shared that, the more he had done his sport, it was a swimmer, he was aging, but he said, my life is important too. So several athletes talked about work-life balance and practicing their athleticism at a high level. Athletes talked about gratitude as part of their process of being an athlete. Katie Ledecky, did you hear her interview or what she did after winning one of her medals? She thanked her opponent. Is it Ariane from Australia? And she ran right over to her opponent and said, thank you for making me a better swimmer. To her opponent. Oh, and one of my favorite scenes at all, when the Brazilian gymnast got a gold, and it was Biles and Childs on either side. Did you see what they did? The two Americans, what did they do? They bowed to their Brazilian opponent. I mean, isn't that just incredible? There were so many elements of wisdom. He said it wasn't about winning. It was about gratitude. It was about progress and process, not perfection. And finally, the final illustration, he said, is that it's about, are you ready for this? And it ties into what Marilee was talking about. It's about faith. And there was an illustration of the German shot putter, Odalea. Her first throw didn't go so hot. And before her next throw, she kind of huddled a little bit and she sang a gospel song. So she's part of a gospel music group. So she sang, and in her interview, Google this, look it up on YouTube, she sang that gospel song that gave her faith. So there's so many things that make up wisdom. Sometimes I think we think if you're at an elite level, you're just going to be a winner and you're going to knock other people down. Being at an elite level in the Bible as people of faith means practicing wisdom. So don't take the pressure in situations where you feel like you can't say anything. Don't take the pressure where you're around someone who's trying to fix it. I'm going to fix it. You can say, hold on. Let's think. Let's be patient. Let's be thoughtful. Let's think of other points of view. Not to slow a process down, not to bring somebody else down or put yourself out there, but just trying to practice common wisdom. To God be the glory. Amen.